My name is Lauren Patricia Callahan. I'm 38 years old, and for the past 14 years, I've worked as the Director of Strategic Partnerships for the Callahan Foundation, a private family foundation that provides grants to nonprofits focused on food security, small business development, and education access across Colorado. Jessica thinks I work for a little nonprofit. She's never asked which one. Our father, Patrick Callahan, died 6 years ago from a sudden heart attack at 64. He'd been a quiet man, a CPA who built a modest accounting firm and invested carefully. He didn't talk much about money. He talked about values instead. Your worth isn't in your bank account, he used to say. It's in what you do when no one's watching. After he died, Jessica and I sat in the lawyer's office while the will was read. Dad had split most assets evenly. The house to our mother, retirement accounts divided among his children. The business sold with proceeds distributed equally. But there was one thing he left only to me. A trust fund he'd been quietly building since before I was born. Nearly $4.8 million in carefully diversified investments, set up to fund the foundation. He'd dreamed of creating but never had time to start himself. Lauren will know what to do with this, the will stated. She has her mother's heart. Jessica had been furious. Why does Lauren get a separate inheritance? She'd demanded. The attorney had been patient. The foundation was your father's wish. He believed Lauren's career path aligned with his charitable goals, so he's rewarding her for choosing a low-paying job. He's trusting her to honor his legacy. Jessica left the office before the meeting finished. She didn't speak to me for 3 months. When she finally called, it wasn't to apologize. It was to ask for money. I'm opening a restaurant, she'd said. I need startup capital. Since Dad left you millions for charity, maybe you could invest in family instead. I'd said no, not because I didn't want to help, but because Jessica's business plan was incomplete. Her market research was thin, and her financial projections were wildly optimistic. So you'll give money to strangers, but not your own sister. She'd snapped. I'll help you refine your plan. I know grant writers, business consultants. Forget it. I'll do it myself. And she did. She took out loans, maxed out credit cards, convinced Craig to drain his 401k, Lavender, and Time opened 18 months later in a trendy Denver neighborhood with high rent and higher expectations. For the first year, Jessica posted constantly on social media. Photos of beautifully plated dishes, smiling customers, 5-star reviews. Built this from nothing, her captions read. No handouts, no help, just hard work and vision. What she didn't post were the rejection letters from investors, the mounting debt, the months she couldn't make payroll. That's when the anonymous donations started. Not to Jessica directly. She would have refused. But to things adjacent to Jessica. Her daughter Morgan's private school tuition, quietly paid by an anonymous benefactor. The restaurant's commercial insurance, premium, mysteriously covered by a one-time grant for women-owned businesses. The property tax bill that somehow got paid just before the deadline by a foundation Jessica had never heard of. The Callahan Foundation didn't publicly list its grants under $25,000. Everything I gave. Jessica stayed quiet, invisible, the way Dad had taught me. Over 4 years, I'd directed roughly $127,000 toward keeping my sister's dream alive. She never knew. To Jessica, I was the younger sister who'd gotten lucky with an inheritance she didn't deserve, who worked a cute little job, who showed up to family dinners in old cardigans and sensible shoes. She never asked about my work, never visited the foundation office, never wondered how a small, nonprofit's director could afford to live in Denver's Capitol Hill neighborhood, or why I kept irregular hours. She'd built an entire narrative about my life without once asking if it was true. And I'd let her. Maybe because it was easier than explaining. Maybe because I liked the privacy. Maybe because some part of me wanted to see if she'd ever look close enough to notice. She hadn't. After the breadbasket incident, dinner continued with forced normalcy. Jessica held court, telling stories about difficult customers and incompetent suppliers. Craig nodded along. My mother looked tired. David checked his phone under the table. I ate my salmon quietly. It was perfectly cooked. Of course it was. Jessica had hired an excellent chef. With money she'd borrowed at 11% interest because her credit was ruined. I knew because I'd seen the loan documents. Not through snooping, but through work. When Jessica had applied for a small business grant through a city program, she'd listed the Callahan Foundation as a reference, probably because it sounded impressive, not because she knew I ran it. The application crossed my desk. I'd recused myself from the voting, but I'd read it. Her financials were worse than I'd thought. The restaurant was 3 months from default. Dessert arrived. Lavender panna cotta with honey tuile cookies. Jessica's signature dish. She'd posted about developing the recipe dozens of times. "This is beautiful, Jess," my mother said softly. Jessica beamed. "Thank you. It's been featured in Denver Magazine twice now. You should be very proud," Barbara said. "Your father would have loved this place." Something flickered across Jessica's face. Dad didn't believe in restaurants. He thought they were risky investments. "He believed in you," I said quietly. Jessica's eyes snapped to me. "What would you know about it? You barely talked to him about anything real. You were always too busy with your causes." The table went silent again. I set down my fork. "I talked to Dad every Sunday for 2 years before he died." "About what? Art exhibitions and farmers markets?" "About legacy. About what matters after we're gone." Jessica laughed. "Of course. St. Lauren, always so philosophical." She looked around the table. Meanwhile, some of us were building actual businesses in the real world. My brother David cleared his throat. "Jessica, no, I'm tired of tiptoeing around this." Lauren got millions, from Dad to play charity director while the rest of us worked for everything. She lives in her little apartment, shops at thrift stores, acts like she's struggling when we all know she's sitting on Dad's money. "Jessica, stop." My mother's voice was sharp, but Jessica was on a roll. "What? It's true. She could help her own family. But instead she gives money to strangers. Do you know she turned me down when I asked for help with this restaurant? Said my business plan wasn't good enough." She shook her head. 4 years later, I've proven her wrong. I did this without her, and she can't stand it. The restaurant around us seemed to fade. All I could hear was my pulse and Jessica's voice and the small voice in my head that sounded like my father. Sometimes people need to hear the truth, even when they don't want it. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. "Jessica," I said calmly, "who do you think paid Morgan's tuition last spring when you were short?" She blinked. "That was an anonymous scholarship, granted by the Callahan Foundation, which I direct." Her expression changed. "What? Who do you think covered your property tax in 2022 when you were 3 months behind?" That was a city program for small businesses, funded by a grant from the Callahan Foundation, administered by me. The color drained from her face. I opened my phone and pulled up a document. "Who do you think paid for the new commercial oven when yours broke last November? The one you told everyone was a gift from a grateful supplier?" "Lauren." "The supplier was a vendor we fund through our small business development program. I personally authorized the grant." I set my phone on the table. The screen showed a spreadsheet. Dates, amounts, descriptions. "Over the past 4 years," I said quietly, "the Callahan Foundation has directed $127,120 to programs, grants, and services that directly benefited you, your restaurant, and your family. You never knew because I kept it anonymous. Because Dad taught me that real generosity doesn't need recognition." Jessica stared at the screen. "You think I work at a little nonprofit?" I continued. "I run a $4.8 million foundation that employs 6 people and funded 47 grants last year. You think I live in a little apartment? I own a 3-bedroom condo I bought outright in 2019. You think I shop at thrift stores? I donate to them." My mother's hand covered her mouth. "You asked me for help once," I said to Jessica. "I said no to a direct investment because your business plan had holes. But I've been helping you anyway, quietly, the way Dad would have wanted." Jessica's voice came out as a whisper. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you never asked what I actually do. You decided who I was and stopped looking." Tears started down her face. I picked up my phone and stood. "For the record, I can eat as much bread as I want. I paid for this dinner 6 months ago when I authorized the grant that covered your April rent." Then I walked out of Lavender in time into the cool Denver night. I didn't go home. I drove to the foundation office in Capitol Hill, a converted Victorian house with high ceilings and crown molding that Dad would have loved. My office was on the 2nd floor, overlooking a small garden we'd planted last spring. I sat at my desk in the dark, looking out at the city lights. My phone buzzed. "David, Mom wants to know if you're okay." I typed back, "I'm fine. Tell her I'm sorry for making a scene." "You didn't make a scene." Jessica did. 4 years ago and again tonight. I stared at that message for a long time. My phone rang. My mother. "Hi, Mom. Why didn't you tell us?" Her voice was gentle, not accusatory. "Tell you what?" any of it. The foundation work, the grants, what you've been doing for Jessica. I watched a car pass below, because it wasn't supposed to be about recognition. There's a difference between recognition and honesty, sweetheart. I closed my eyes. I know. Your father would be so proud of what you've built. But he wouldn't want you carrying this alone. I'm not alone. I have a whole team. Lauren, she waited until I stopped. You've been protecting Jessica for 4 years. Who's been protecting you? I didn't have an answer. After we hung up, I sat there until midnight. Then I did something I should have done years ago. I drafted an email to Jessica. Not angry, not accusatory. Just honest. Jess, I left tonight because I was hurt. Not because I wanted to embarrass you. For 4 years, I've watched you struggle and helped in the only way I thought you'd accept, invisibly. I thought I was honoring Dad's values. But I was also avoiding a hard conversation. You built something beautiful. Lavender and Thyme is everything you envisioned. You should be proud. But you built it with help. Not just from me, but from Craig, from Mom, from the chef who stayed when you couldn't pay her on time, from the customers who kept coming back even when service was slow. There's no shame in that. The shame is in pretending we do everything alone. I'm not angry you didn't know about the grants. I'm sad you never asked what my life actually looked like. I love you. I'm proud of you, and I'm done hiding. Lauren, I sent it at 12:47 a.m. Jessica responded at 2:14 a.m. Can we talk? We met at Cheeseman Park the next morning. The weather was that perfect early autumn temperature. Cool enough for a jacket, warm enough for coffee on a bench. Jessica was already there when I arrived, holding 2 cups from the cafe near her house. I got you a vanilla latte, she said. The way you used to drink them in college. I sat down beside her. I drink black coffee now. She laughed, but it sounded sad. Of course you do. I didn't even know that. For a while, we sat in silence, watching joggers and dog walkers pass. I read your email 17 times, Jessica finally said. I almost deleted it 17 times before sending. She turned to face me. Why didn't you just tell me? About the grants, the foundation, all of it? I thought about that. Honestly? At first, because you were so angry about Dad's will. I didn't want to rub it in. Then, because you seemed so proud of doing it alone. And eventually, because I realized you preferred the version of me you'd created. The unsuccessful little sister made you feel better about your own choices. Jessica flinched. That's harsh. It's also true. She stared at her coffee. When Dad died and you got that trust, I felt like he was saying I wasn't good enough. Like my choices were wrong. He was saying our paths were different. Not better or worse. That's not how it felt. She wiped her eyes. I've spent 6 years trying to prove I didn't need his money or his approval. That I could build something that mattered without a safety net. You did build something that matters. With your safety net. That I didn't even know was there. I shook my head. The grants helped with emergencies. You built the restaurant. You created the menu, hired the staff, designed the space, found the customers. That was all you. But the foundation supported a business that aligned with our mission. Food security, local sourcing, community gathering spaces. You qualified for every grant you received. I just made sure your applications got proper attention. She was quiet for a long moment. Did you ever resent it? Dad leaving you the foundation work? Sometimes. It's a lot of pressure. But mostly I'm grateful. I get to spend my days helping people build things they care about. Like you. Jessica started crying then. Not delicate tears, but the kind of crying that's been building for years. I've been so awful to you, she said. You've been hurt and proud and human. I said terrible things. At dinner. And before that. And God, Lauren, I've been punishing you for years for something that wasn't your fault. I put my arm around her. I let you. I could have been honest earlier. I chose privacy and protection over honesty. That wasn't fair either. We sat there for a long time, my arm around my sister, watching the world wake up around us. Finally, Jessica pulled back. What happens now? Now you finish reading the documents I sent this morning. She looked confused. What documents? I pulled out my phone and showed her. Your restaurant qualifies for our Economic Resilience Grant Program. It's a $50,000 grant specifically for women-owned food businesses facing debt restructuring. Applications are due next month. Lauren, I've recused myself from the evaluation committee. Our board chair will handle it personally. You'll have to submit a complete application, including a 3-year financial plan and sustainability metrics. It's not a handout. It's an opportunity to actually stabilize. She stared at the information. Why would you do this? After everything I said? Because the Foundation's mission isn't based on whether people are nice to me. It's based on whether they're doing work that matters. And you are. Jessica read through the requirements. This is really detailed. That business plan you thought wasn't good enough 4 years ago? Now you have to write it for real. She actually laughed. You're still bossing me around. I'm still your little sister. She reached over and squeezed my hand. I'm sorry. For all of it. For the assumptions, the comments, the breadbasket. I'm sorry too. For not trusting you with the truth. Can we start over? We don't have to start over. We just have to start being honest. Jessica submitted the grant application. 6 weeks later. It was 47 pages long, including financial projections, sustainability plans, and community impact assessments. I didn't read it. I kept my promise to recuse myself. The board approved it in November, not because Jessica was my sister, but because her application demonstrated exactly the kind of resilient, community-focused business we were designed to support. The grant came with requirements: quarterly financial reporting, participation in our small business mentorship program, and a commitment to hiring from our workforce development partners. Jessica met every requirement. By spring, Lavender and Thyme had restructured its debt, hired 2 additional staff members, and started offering cooking classes for low-income families, a program idea that came from the mentorship sessions. I never thought of the restaurant as a community resource. Jessica told me over lunch one Saturday. I just thought of it as mine. It can be both, I said. She smiled. That sounds like something Dad would say. I think he did say it, usually while doing our taxes. We laughed, and it felt easy in a way it hadn't for years. Things weren't perfect. Jessica still occasionally made comments about my clothes or my car. I still sometimes pulled back instead of being direct. We were siblings, not saints. But we were honest now. The next family dinner, Jessica insisted on hosting again. This time, before anyone sat down, she stood at the head of the table. I need to say something, she announced. The room quieted. Last time we were all together, I said something cruel to Lauren. I accused her of not contributing when she's actually been contributing more than any of us. Knew. She looked at me. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. My mother reached for my hand. Jessica continued. I also want everyone to know that Lavender and Thyme wouldn't exist without help, not just from Craig and Mom and our investors, but from the Callahan Foundation, which my little sister runs, and which has supported this restaurant through grants. I didn't even know I was receiving. Morgan looked up, surprised. Wait, Aunt Lauren runs a foundation? A $4.8 million foundation that Dad created, Jessica said, and I've spent years resenting her for it. Instead of asking her what she actually does all day, she picked up the wine bottle and poured a glass. So tonight, dinner is on me, actually on me this time. Paid from revenue, not credit cards. And Lauren, please eat as much bread as you want. In fact, she pushed the entire bread basket in front of me. I insist. I smiled. 1 roll is enough. 2, Jessica countered. You look like you've lost weight. I've been running. Since when do you run? Since about 4 years ago. You never asked. She nodded slowly. You're right. I didn't. Dinner that night was different. People asked me about the foundation work. I showed them photos of recent grant recipients. A community garden, a small bakery training program, a food delivery service for homebound seniors. This is incredible, David said. Why haven't we heard about this before? Because Lauren's been doing Dad's favorite thing, my mother said quietly. Working when no one's watching. After dessert, the same lavender panna cotta, which I ate slowly and enjoyed completely, Jessica walked me to my car. Thank you, she said. For the grant. For not giving up on me. For the breadbasket takedown. I didn't take you down. I just told the truth. Sometimes those are the same thing. She hugged me. I'm going to be better. At asking, at noticing, at being your sister instead of your critic. I'm going to be better too. At speaking up instead of staying quiet. She pulled back. Deal. As I drove home that night, I thought about my father's words. Your worth isn't in your bank account. It's in what you do when no one's watching. For years, I'd interpreted that as a call to invisible service, to helping without recognition, to staying small and quiet while doing big work. But maybe that wasn't quite right. Maybe real worth isn't just in what you do when no one's watching. It's in building something meaningful enough that when people finally do look, they see truth instead of performance. Jessica had spent years performing success while drowning privately. I'd spent years performing smallness while building privately. We'd both been hiding,